Okay. I think that's going. I hope. Well, I don't see anything.
Yes.
Okay, so here we are, week 2 of Blended Families. Lesson 2 of 12. This last week it was all about what is a godly marriage. This week it's what is a blended family. And there are lots of flavors. So the types of blended families, the two that we're going to spend the most time on are the remarriage after divorce and remarriage after the loss of a spouse. Some of the other examples of blended families are just people from different cultures, different nationalities. You can have different cultures even in the same country. Like Carol was brought up in New England. She was married to somebody from Texas. That's 2 different cultures.
Yeah.
Different nationalities, so different countries, different religions. Hopefully we're not too much in that because the Bible tells us don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. So if somebody's from a different religion, you could end up with a lot of issues just because of that. Different beliefs, different truths, if you will. Adoption can create a blended family because now you have a child in your family that's not flesh and blood from you, so it's someone else's child. And even a first marriage is a blending of 2 unique families. So when somebody gets married, you really aren't just marrying your spouse. There's a lot of stuff that comes with a spouse. The in-laws, the outlaws, and so forth. So all kind of things. But we're going to spend more time with the remarriage after divorce and remarriage after the loss of a spouse because that's where most of the people are in the class. Okay, so remarriage after divorce. A divorce is basically taking the law to break a covenant. A marriage is supposed to be a covenant till death do us part. When divorce is used, you're basically taking the law to break what is a covenant. So it creates a whole lot more spiritual baggage, and it also kind of puts you back under the law. You use the law to get out of a covenant, so now you have to do what the court tells you. Alimony, child support, custody, all those kind of things, and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of baggage that comes with the divorce, but you end up having to do a whole bunch of stuff that the court tells you, and so there's a lot less freedom to do what you want to do. Got to deal with root causes. Why was there a divorce in the first place? So now, once you're separated, you need to take some time and figure out what happened. A lot of different things. There's, that could cause root causes, especially adultery, addictions, anger, abuse, abandonment. All these kind of things can lead to a divorce. So these things need to be identified, and we have a whole nother class just for this kind of stuff. That's their Beyond Divorce class. But you have to identify what really was the root cause, how much of that was your fault, how much of that do you have to own, because you don't generally own the whole thing. There will be people that try to tell you it was all your fault, but it's probably theirs more than yours. If they're telling you it was yours, it's probably mostly theirs. But it's, 70-30, 60-40, occasionally 50-50, but it's never 100 and 0. So, like I said, and it just kind of worked out that all these things are A's: adultery, addictions, anger, abuse, abandonment. So once these things have been identified, they need to be confessed. Take them to the Lord, confess, Lord, I had adultery in my life, I had addiction in my life, uncontrolled anger, which often leads to abuse. A lot of times spouses just take off. They abandon the other spouse. So all these things need to be identified. They need to be owned so that you really are aware of what happened, what you were doing, the kinds of things that you were doing that led to the divorce. Ultimately, though, you will need to forgive the other person for whatever they did to you. You need to know what they did, but just forgive them for what they did, because they got to own their stuff. They have to own their stuff. They have to go to God with their stuff, if they're Christians, and deal with their stuff. You can't fix their stuff, and they can't fix your stuff. So it's all about owning your piece of the pie and asking God to forgive you for what you've done and forgive the other party for what they have done. If, in a lot of cases, when people get divorced, there's some sort of a conflict, some disagreement that they just can't seem to figure out, or it's just a matter of being very selfish and not loving like we're supposed to. Love your neighbor as your spouse and all that. So depending on what the circumstances are, if you don't own them and deal with them, and then you get remarried, you're just going to end up with all the same stuff because it was never dealt with. And that's a big part of getting healed. It takes time to heal, especially for any children. A lot of times children will take on the thought that they did something that created the situation that led to a divorce, that their parents just couldn't deal with them for some reason. But what we found mostly the case is because there's so much conflict with the adults, the children really are under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, never knowing really what's going to happen. They don't get what's really going on. So they kind of take it on themselves that whatever is going on is something I did. So it's very important to take time to heal. Give your children an opportunity to process what's going on. Don't jump from one thing to another and all that. So make sure, we like to say have a family meeting, get the kids together, like with you and the new person whenever there's a new relationship getting started especially. But have a meeting, let the kids know that they didn't do anything wrong. It was the adults that messed up. Give them an opportunity to forgive you, and that kind of clears out the baggage. It goes a long way towards eliminating any generational curses from a lack of forgiveness. If they're holding on to something and if they see you not forgiving someone else, odds are they won't forgive you either, and then they'll end up doing all the same stuff. So that generational thing keeps going. But forgiveness is what sets us free. Christ died on the cross so that we would be able to be forgiven for our sins, and it's the forgiveness of the sin that sets us free. If we don't forgive someone else, we own that. If we don't forgive ourselves, we still own that. And that's what keeps us in bondage, is that lack of forgiveness. God allows do-overs. So that's what, again, Christ died on the cross so we could start over. a multiple number of times. It's not just you get one, you get one screw up and you get one do-over. That's not it. You get however many chances you need. As long as you come back, then you're okay. So that's all right. That's what's important. Okay, so that was remarriage after a divorce. The other one that we talked the most about is the remarriage after the loss of a spouse. So in this case, the covenant till death do us part was fulfilled. You were married till however long, somebody died, the covenant was fulfilled. So there is a whole lot less spiritual baggage. There's still some because you've had this relationship with this person for years, some more than others, but there's a lot of intermingling of experiences and the history and everything else. Now this person's gone, you have to deal with the loss. So take time to grieve, allow your heart to heal from the loss. You're still free to enter into a new covenant, though. So now you didn't use the law to break the covenant, so now you're still free to do things. A lot more so than after a divorce. You have a different set of problems now, though. I like to say that a new spouse is kind of like a new pair of shoes. Sometimes you get a new pair of shoes, first time or two you wear them, you get blisters. But once you got them broke in, there's really like, oh man, that pair of shoes just is so comfortable once you get them broke in. And they're familiar, they fit well, they feel good. But in the beginning, maybe not so much. So the new spouse, kind of like a new pair of shoes, sometimes you get blisters. One of the really big things, though, in a remarriage after the loss of a spouse, especially if there had been a number of years together, and depending on how long it is in between. So again, we don't want anybody just jumping into something else. There needs to be some time in there to, get vertical again, deal with the loss. Especially if they were a Christian, know they're in heaven, they're with God, it's all good, and all that. But what usually happens is people tend to forget most of the negative stuff, and they only remember the really good stuff. All right, so now that's been maybe a year, 2 years, or whatever. Now they meet somebody, God brings somebody into their life, and they start having another relationship. It's very easy to compare the new one to how great the old one was, if they were a good one. Sometimes they weren't, and it's like good riddance, But generally, if it was a good marriage, a Christian marriage, then it's going to be very easy to try to compare. And we've seen a lot of couples that have struggled with, somebody died, they got remarried, that guy was great, this guy's a loser, and all they do is compare the old one to the new one.
Well, again, because they only remember the good parts, they forgot about the bad parts.
They only tend to remember the good stuff, so now they don't remember all the negative stuff. So it's so important to really get your vertical all back straight up and down, take care of any issues that you may have had, make sure you're okay with you're healthy spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and all that kind of stuff. You don't really need anybody else other than Jesus in your life. But someone else in your life could be a great blessing, could be a bonus, right? It's not good for a man to be alone, so we were created to have relationships. So try not to compare the old one, because that was them. This is somebody else. They're totally different human being, different ideas, different preferences, everything is different. So whenever you, especially in a conversation, you might do this in your mind, think about, well, the other guy was so great, or the other lady was so great. Boy, I sure miss them. But don't ever have that conversation with the new person, because it's just going to make them feel bad. One of the other things, and we ran into this one, is adult children. If you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, I even met some people that were in their 80s and got remarried. There's adult children. It's not like you're getting teenagers in here, right? These are 20, 30, 40-year-olds. They got their own life, got their own kids. How do you bring them into this new relationship? Most of the time, they're not that interested in being a big part of your new family. They got their family. They were part of the old family and all that. So adult children become your stepchildren, and they may not be interested. My mom remarried. She was 60 something, I think. That guy had some kids. I was never interested in any of being a part of their life. They weren't interested in being a part of our life.
Well, they were in Ohio. We were down here in Arizona.
Yeah, we were clear across the country too. So that distance sometimes helps. If we were in the same city, maybe you might go out to eat with them or something. But there was really no reason to develop a relationship with somebody you'd never met before, just because the parents got married. So depending on the age of the children, the younger they are, the more they're gonna want to be part of something. But the older they get, the less likely they are to be all that interested in developing some brand new relationships. So basically, just to kind of recap, there's less baggage. Take time to grieve from the loss. Don't compare the old and the new. Give the new one a chance to get part of this new thing. Don't expect them to be right up to speed right off the bat, because they got to get used to you. You got to get used to them. What we'll be talking about next week is celebrate your differences. You got to spend some time figuring out what this person likes, what that person likes. How do we take the best of your stuff and my stuff and put all that together and build a new normal? So, and let the adult children kind of drive whatever happens. I mean, you're probably going to be off doing stuff, traveling maybe, or just hanging out watching TV together. Who knows? But it doesn't mean you have to make a huge effort. Be friendly, be nice, be kind, and all that, like we're supposed to be as Christians. But there's not going to be a lot of drive, especially on their part, to bring you in. If they do, that's great, but don't expect a whole lot from that. Okay. Remarriage requires each spouse to give each other lots of grace and mercy. And we just talked about this. As you learn how to celebrate each other's differences rather than see the differences as points of contention. And what happens is, I think my way is right. So therefore, your way must be wrong if it's not the same as mine. Our first instinct is to be right or wrong, right? So what needs to happen in a remarriage is to allow this thing some time to develop, get to know the person. There's tons of stuff to talk about. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Ultimately, the two different normals that we're talking about here, those need to become more Christ-like. We're both Christians. We're not going to be unequally yoked, so we're going to be marrying another Christian. So our beliefs should be based on what's in the Bible. The Bible should be the umpire, the referee, and anything we have differences on, we should be looking them up in the book and see what the book says. So discover each other's God-given gifts, make use of them to benefit the new marriage. Again, with a covenant mentality. Okay? Too many people enter into a marriage with more of a contract mentality. I'll do what I'm supposed to do as long as you do what you're supposed to do. But if you mess up, I'm out. That's not a covenant mentality. A covenant mentality is, I'm in this till death do us part. Yeah, things won't always be perfect. Sometimes things will be tough. Sometimes they'll be great. But it's knowing that 20 years from now, whatever's going on right now is probably something we'll be sitting on the porch in our rocking chairs laughing about. You know, we survived that. And you have that to look forward to. But a covenant mentality is that till death do us part. Divorce is not an option. It's not even a word in our dictionary, and those kind of things. And, you know, hopefully there will be many years on that path, right? So a married couple should be spending a lot of time getting to know the other person. Hopefully he did some of that before he got married. And that's why he got married, because there was enough in there that you liked. But we've also seen in a lot of premarital counseling where people disregard the red flags and get married anyway. And then a few months later, we're talking to them, trying to help them out. So I never understood that one. If there's red flags, figure out what those are and make sure they're not red flags anymore. If you are going to get married, get those dealt with beforehand, because it's once you've done the legal thing, now it's so much more difficult to get out of it. Now you get all the baggage and all that other stuff that goes with it. So take the time, get to know what each person is good at, and then make use of those talents. You know, if the wife is great with numbers and checkbooks and all that, let her do the banking stuff. You know, just because I'm the guy doesn't mean I have to run the money. You know, those kind of, whoever's good at whatever, let them do whatever they're good at. Because then both parties benefit. But if you start dividing up things based on gender, for example, just because I'm the guy, just because you're the wife, you know, those kind of, who's good at it? Let that person do what needs to be done.
Or one wanting to be in complete control.
Yeah, we don't really want that. Part of what we talked about last week was the different types of submission. There was that little flow chart that we had, right? First one is both parties are submitting to God, then each other as equals. And then if they get that right, then the wife to the husband. But just because you're the husband doesn't mean that you're the boss. Jesus is the boss. So even the husband has to submit to him. And it's so much easier for a wife to submit to a husband when the husband's submitting to Christ and loving her like she's supposed to be loved. And, you know, you've got the proper speaking to one another, you're edifying one another, you're not being critical all the time. There's some people that just have a critical spirit, and all they do is criticize. The other party can't do anything right. And this person is constantly pointing out what they did wrong. Nobody wants to live with that. That's just so negative. And it's that kind of a thing that leads to a lot of divorces. But there's a lot of marriages where that's the case. And just for the example, the wife is the one that's critical. The husband basically just ends up drinking all the time, just to not hear it. So he's not out leading. He's not being productive. He's just there because he can't handle the negative stuff. We talk about expectations sometimes. Generally, a man will live up to, especially a wife's, expectations. If her expectations are up here, he'll do what he can to get there. If her expectations are down here, he'll be more than happy to meet these. But the problem is if her expectations are up here somewhere, but she talks to him like he's down here, there's a big gap. All this in here will be very much frustration on his part, because he knows he should be up here. He knows she would like for him to be up here, but she keeps telling him he's down here. So be careful with that. There was a restaurant we used to go to. The owner got in trouble, and then it kind of died. But they had a whole bunch of funny sayings and stuff painted on the walls and the ceilings and all kinds of stuff. One of the ones that I liked was just outside the front door under the canopy thing there. It said, if our food doesn't meet your expectations, lower your expectations. And in a marriage, we kind of got to do that. If your expectations are too high, and again, depending on how you're edifying your partner, whatever this gap is, they may only think they could get here, but if you constantly are building them up, they'll get up higher. They'll surprise themselves. But unfortunately, most people are more negative than positive. It takes a lot more effort to be positive, especially in a relationship, because you have to look for something to edify. But our nature is generally to be negative. So it's very easy to pick out what's wrong. It's the plank and the speck in our eyes. It's easier to pick somebody else apart. And for some people, that kind of makes them feel better if they're picking on somebody else, because they don't have to look at themselves that way. So just have that covenant mentality. Whatever's going on right now is temporary. Trials and tribulations are promised, but God gets us through the trials and tribulations. He doesn't keep us from having them. He's there to go with us through the trials and tribulations so that we can get through them and get out on the other side and be better off and be stronger for it. Grace and mercy. That's what being a Christian is all about. We need a lot of grace and mercy, so we should be giving a lot of grace and mercy. We reap what we sow. Again, if we're being critical, if we're sowing criticism, we're going to reap criticism. Maybe not from our spouse, but from other people behind our back. They'll see how we treat other people, and they'll be judging us based on how we're judging. And that's what God says. How you judge, you will be judged. So that's good. Okay. That was quick. Any questions, comments? I can go over this one. I think you guys missed this slide. Just different types of blended families. Last week was what is a godly marriage. This is what is a blended family. The two we spent the most time on, obviously, the first two up here. We're talking about different cultures, could be from the same country, different parts of the country, New England, South, grits versus something else, seafood, very different. Foods are different, ideas are different. Same country. U.S. is a big country. So there's lots of different areas that are very different. The Southeast is very different from the Northwest, things like that. Here in Arizona, we're like we actually used to be part of Mexico, right? So there's a lot of Mexican, Hispanic kind of influence and everything, and the food and all that kind of stuff. You wouldn't see much of that in New England. So up there it's lobster rolls.
Yay.
And yeah.
Larry, earlier you mentioned the term of becoming vertical.
Right.
What were you referring to when you
Well, I basically call our personal relationship with Christ our vertical, because we have that one, and then we have all the other ones, which would be the horizontal, right?
Our relationship with our wives and friends and stuff.
People.
But if you don't have this one right, it's gonna mess
Yeah.
up this one.
If you're a little wonky, then all the other stuff is kind of wonky, right? So depending on how vertical the vertical is, 90 degrees is awesome. When that's right, you get along with pretty much everybody else. At least you make the effort to get along with everybody else, right? As it depends on you, get along with people, right? Some people you just can't. So like we were talking about last week, sometimes you need boundaries. There are just certain people you got to have a boundary with, because they're just a toxic, maybe they're not a Christian, maybe they are, but they're just very negative. There are negative Christians out there, right? Shouldn't be, but there is. So depending on that person's personality, their worldview, and those kind of things, you may need to love your neighbor from across the street, right?
My grandmother used to have a term that says, I fed him with a long-handled spoon.
Oh yeah, right. Well, I saw an illustration a while back. This was like in hell, okay, and there's 5 or 6 individuals sitting around this big pot of stew or whatever, and they all got this like 4-foot long spoon, like strapped to their arm, right? Well, there's no way you're going to get that up to your own mouth, right? And they keep trying to figure out how to eat, and they're starving, and then basically somebody finally figures out, well, if I feed the guy next to me, at least they can eat, and then it kind of goes around the table. Well, if they figured that out, they wouldn't be in hell, right? So I like that it was an animated thing too. It was pretty good. But if you're willing to help someone else, that's what being a Christian is all about, serving, right? If you're going through a crisis, a trial, a tribulation, or whatever, the best way to get out of that is to go help somebody else. Because not always, but a lot of times when you're struggling, it's because you're too focused on yourself. And when you take your eyes off of yourself and focus more on Jesus, especially, but just other people, then you can kind of get out of the funk. Now you start, you get watered when you water someone else. You get fed when you feed someone else, and you reap that blessing of blessing someone else. So, again, it's all about serving. Yeah.
You were talking about covenant mentality.
Right.
And I think that's something that we are losing now in this world right now, is that type of mentality, covenant mentality where we stick together and we stay together and we work things out, thick and thin, no matter what. And I was just having a conversation with my wife in the car. We're here because God has shown me something about myself that I didn't really, it was there, I kind of knew it was there, but I kind of pushed it down so far where I didn't even realize it, but it was that I had a distrust for women. And it was based off of that whole no covenant type mentality, where here it is, we're supposed to be together, and we're supposed to stay together, but yet you want to run away because of the issues. And so I didn't realize that I had a problem with that, because here it is, I'm like you thick and thin, and you're like, no, I'm in the wind.
Right.
And so, we've lost that covenant mentality.
Yeah,
And,
you're right.
It's a battle, it's a fight.
Well, it is. Like we said, like we said last week, marriage is spiritual warfare. And when we're in the flesh, we're more in the contract frame of mind, right? As long as it's good and you're doing what you're supposed to do, then I'm in. But as soon as something gets a little sideways, now there's conflict. And most people hate it, right? I mean, nobody's like, yeah, conflict, yeah. You know, it's like, oh man, I don't want to do this. So it's so much easier to run when things get a little tough.
And you said about focusing on other people as well, focusing on God, focusing on other people.
Right.
What God showed me too is I was focused on myself and my feelings, my hurtful feelings of what was going on in the relationship. So I was focused on my pain and my issue.
Right.
And it didn't even occur to me to ask them, what's going on with you?
Yeah.
Why are we having this issue? Can you explain to me and to dig into it? Because see, if I would focus on them, then maybe we could have opened up, some type of area where we could discuss things and work things out. But instead, I was so focused on me and what I was feeling that I actually went out and did something that I wasn't supposed to do, and then, the whole situation fell apart. Like, because what you said is focusing on other people and on God is the way. You have to be able to put the focus on them, because we're always going to think about ourselves.
Sure.
I mean, that's our nature, to think about ourselves, to, what do I need, what's good for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was there. 23 years in, I'm like, is this all there is? I deserve better. Right? So I got selfish. It was all about me. And I kept focusing on what I wanted, not what I needed, but what I wanted, which was totally selfish. And that just totally led me down the wrong road. But that's kind of what happens. You get selfish because of the spiritual warfare, the nature of life, right? Satan's trying to kill, steal, and destroy. And the best way he does that is to get us thinking about ourselves and instead of other people. When we're thinking about other people, then we're not this, we're this. So as over a period of months, as I spent more and more time focused on me, the more selfish I got, and then the more stupid I got. And that's where you start making mistakes, because you're doing what you want to do, and you don't care about anybody else. You don't care. It's whatever. They're on their own. I'm out. And that's what happens. But when you're focused on, especially as a spouse or your kids or other people, that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be looking for opportunities to bless others, because then God blesses us. But if we're all selfish and everything, God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So as we're thinking about others, there's more blessing in it for us. So, I mean, if you want to be selfish, think about how blessed you're going to be when you take care of other people. But yeah, you're right. If you're more focused on your issues, your pain, the things that happen to you that haven't been forgiven, I mean, like parents or other family members or coworkers or whoever did something in the past, and that's what you start focusing on, then that pain is going to become greater and greater until you want to act out to try to make it go away. But if you take it to the cross and you bring God into it, I mean, he knows all about it, but if you bring it to him and you tell him how you feel, hey, this person did this to me 20 years ago and I've never really let it go. I really want to let it go because it's holding me back. I know it is. He can help you forgive them and even forgive yourself for holding on to it for so long. But it's that ability to let things go, forgive people for what they did, even if it was 50 years ago. It just sets you free. Because once you forgive it, Satan can't use it against you anymore. But as long as you're holding on to